Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Okay, it's not allowing. Okay, I can. Maybe Julia can try. You want to try and I. Oh, hello everyone. Welcome, welcome. Wonderful. Warm, warm, warm welcome. And I wanted to welcome you with this song, a very, I think, appropriate song. So we can tune into the topic.
In 1920, there was a discovery. The female orgasm was discovered in a nunnery. It turns out the clitoris is the holy grail. And ever since these feminines have discovered how to wail. Wail, wail, wail away. It's written in the Bible in a very cryptic way. Wail, wail, wail away. 'Cause she deserves a climax even if it takes all day. On the island of Lesbos, there lived a lot of thespians. And Lesbos, we get the etymology for lesbians. Women citizens of Lesbos used to gather neath the moon for cunnilingus parties. Now we all know the tune. Wail, wail, wail away. It's written in the Quran in a very cryptic way. Wail, wail, wail away. 'Cause she deserves a climax even if it takes all day. Wail, wail, wail away. If Mary is a virgin, then God must be
a woman.
Wail, wail, wail away. 'Cause she deserves a climax even if it takes all day. Now it doesn't really matter if you're wearing a burqa, a skirt or a shirt, whichever dress code you nurture. What matters is the health of the whole female race. Depends on her coming all over your face. Wail, wail, wail away. It's written in the Torah in a very cryptic way. Wail, wail, wail away. She deserves a climax even if it takes all day. Wail, wail, wail away. At the core of the crux is a plethora of foreplay. Wail, wail, wail away. 'Cause she deserves a climax before His Highness hijacks with his war on orgasm. Euphoric female spasm, him who has 'em. It was both Eve and Adam. Blow their loads like a cannon. Don't project a sexist chasm. And don't confuse this song for sarcasm. Wail, wail, wail away. It's written in her diary in a very blatant way. Wail, wail, wail away. 'Cause she deserves a climax even if
She takes all
it takes
day.
all day.
Yes. We can take all the time in the world. Here we are for our last session of this Universe Constant Orgasm Festival. Mm, so good to be here with you. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay. Connection okay? Great. Thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you for sharing how you are. I hear some are tired, some are excited, some curious. Mm. And yeah, it's a sweet song. I share with you. It's called the Orgasm Song by Mobius Loop. It's a very sweet group of gypsy, amazing musicians who created this song. I'll share with you here. Mm. So I thought this is like a wonderful beginning for our community conversation, sex, orgasm, and yoni, and reestablishing a sacred sex language, a language that honors our sexuality. So warm welcome also to Monali, who is here, part of the speakers, and also Dr. Tarbert is here again. Thank you so much for being with us here.
You are
And
welcome. I'm happy to be here.
thank you. It's so wonderful. I wonder, yes, I want to add you all to the spotlight. And Monali, I can add to the spotlight. Yes. And then we're hoping that Maris can find her way. She's has some technical issues, so let's send her lots of prayers for those who have been here with us yesterday. There's some anxiety around sharing and technology and all, and so her heart must be a little bit vulnerable. So we can just send her some extra love to to know that all is fine, and she'll make it here just in sacred timing. It's all it's a good reminder for all of us. So for Marie Devi. So here we are. I would like to actually start with a little presentation just to kind of go into the topic. Monali and I, we made a nice little sum up of this theme for tonight. And then we'll have very special questions, and really looking forward to hear Dr. Tarbet's vast knowledge and experience in terms of all these words. And yeah, I can't wait to hear, and also Marie's insights and knowledge in this topic, and all of yours. So this is really a community conversation where we invite you to be part of the conversation, and yes, to active participate. And then after kind of introducing the topic and going into the different words, we will have some breakout rooms, and we can again share with each other and dive into the language and see if our memory brings up some words, um, some old words that we maybe have forgotten in terms of our sexuality or sex language, which happened to me. Like slowly, all the words are coming back. So I look forward to sharing them with you. So I will share this presentation now with you. So here it looks like this, but I'm gonna go and do present. So, so yes, yoni, orgasm, and pleasure, and co-creating a sacred sex dictionary. Dictionary is a very big word, and we'll see if it's going to be a dictionary or if it's going to be a glossary or a booklet. We have the intention of creating something together that we can cherish and have as a little kind of little Bible. But I would look at it more like a little a Veda or a sutra that we can have with us and see the language, different words, words that are honoring and reverential and implying empowerment when it comes to our sexual nature, when it comes to our sexual being as a being in terms of our bodies, but also in terms of the act of sex that can be with myself or with another being, that we have a language where we can actually communicate in a healthy, empowering, and natural way, because we really lack that in our society. So words affect our thoughts, words affect our self-image, our actions. Really, words in the Vedas, we say, through the name, we get to the named. So the name calls upon the named. So the name is very, very, many of you have been with us for a long time, and we're always honoring Devi through her different names. Now she has infinite names, countless names, and each name is revealing her essential wholeness, her essential adorableness and worthiness to be worshipped and to be praised, that she is the source of love and happiness and all her infinite qualities. So through the name, when we have reverence for the name, we get to the name. It's like when somebody calls you by your name, you know this example, I tell it often. They say, Sylvia. And then Sylvia, she will want to, yes, my dear. But if I say, hey, Sylvia, she's like, yeah. Then immediately there's already an attitude there. And you don't really want to pay attention, do you? So it's the same here. If we don't have a language that addresses us as a physical being or as an emotional being or as a sentimental being, if there's any derogative or disempowering connotation, then this doesn't lead to a healthy self-image, a healthy ego. There will be judgments and so forth. The judgments can turn into what we're seeing here now when it comes to our sexuality, where the judgment has turned into an essential judgment of our being in terms of there's something shameful around being a sexual being. So it has gotten to the very extreme. So we need an empowering and a sacred sex words for an empowered and honoring life. What we have learned, or what I have learned, I don't know what is the language that you have grown up with, but a lot of our sexual vocabulary is either medicalized. We talk in terms of medical when we go to the doctor. There's the vagina, and it's not very sexy. It's not very empowering. As we will see, also many parts of our sacred bodies have been actually named by male. Then we have another way of talking in a euphemistic way, like down there, or that part down there. And so we don't really talk about what it is, and that implies that we feel uncomfortable, or it's the shame that is lying underneath. Then we have another way of talking about our sexualities in terms of baby or childlike words. Like in Switzerland, we had the words like, now I forgot it for boys and girls, but in English you have like the wee or the pee, yeah. And so it's like a childlike language, and that's very sweet. But again, we come to a place, like to an age in our life where we don't maybe want to call our sacred part wee or pee, or and we want it to be a more empowering language. And so the fourth way that many of us have learned unconsciously, maybe not even aware that this is really the way how we talk about our sexuality, is through swear words. So if you think about all the swear words, or not all, but just think about some of the swear words, like asshole. It's a swear word. It's a very strong swear word. But if you look into what it means an ass and a hole. Like, and why does the asshole have to be a swear word? It's not very empowering. Or you're such a dick. Again, the sacred part of the male has been used has been used as a swear word. Or you're such a cunt. It's a very, very strong word. Again, we're going to see with the help of Dr. Tarbet that there's actually a very sacred meaning underneath this word. So cunt, for example. So many swear words are our genitals. And that's again not empowering or honoring in any way when we, when it comes to our body parts. So why not, instead of reclaiming and redefining our language so that it can be and reveal that it can reveal the sacredness, and it can also be enjoyable, because often now when we talk about sex, people also get very uncomfortable. So then we start to make jokes or we become sarcastic, and that just shows that we actually feel very uncomfortable. So to be able to speak in an enjoyable, informative, and empowering way, I really long for that, and and I think many of us, and when we have that language also, then we 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 have power. Mm. If we have a healthy self-image and have a healthy image of ourselves in terms of our body, our emotions, and then of course ultimately through self-knowledge we discover that I am whole and complete, but that gives me power. So language is power. Language, that's why we also say in Veda, Satyam evam bruyat, let it always be truthful. And so if our words don't reveal truth and honoring, then our words become meaningless, and 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 we lose the depths. And so we see also how really language has shaped our culture. So sexuality is a very rich and natural part of our human experience. As we saw, it's through which we all have come into this world. Without the sacred act of making love, we wouldn't be here. So it needs to be free from shame. It needs to be free from violence and from pain. And so all that shame and all that violence and pain is a result of not having uh, a healthy attitude, education, sex education, a language that reveres our essential sexual nature. So words around sexuality and anatomy imply shame or disempowerment. Here you just see a few words, and we're going to see more words. Like masturbation is a very common word, but the inner meaning means to pollute with your hands. Vagina also means the sheath for a sword, so the depository of weapons. And it really actually refers to just one part of the to the genitalia, the female genitalia. It doesn't speak to all parts. Pudendal nerves, those are the branches that innervate the skin in the genitalia area, the superficial pelvic floor. And pudenda comes from the Latin to be ashamed of. So we just see a few words here that are implying disempowerment or shame. In Swiss German, the pubic bone is called the Schambein, the leg of shame. Schambein and Schamlippe. Schamlippe means the lips of shame. The lips, the yoni lips, are called lips of shame in Swiss German, for example, or in German. And then we also have some sexual organs that have received their names from male. And when we talk about this, that doesn't imply there's anything wrong about male in any way. They're all sacred as well. But it's just interesting when I started to learn about the anatomy that our fluids, our glands where the arousal fluid comes out, like the Bartholin's gland, were named after Thomas Bartholin. Or for example, where our ejaculation comes out, they were the glands where our ejaculation, the female ejaculation comes out. They're called Skene's gland, also named after Mr. Skene, Alexander Johnston Chalmers, maybe I say this wrong, Skene. So, and the fallopian tubes, which are the sacred tubes that are connected to the uterus and catch the egg from the ovaries, they are called fallopian tubes. And also fallopian was named after the 16th century Italian anatomist Gabriel Fallopio. So it's just interesting that our genitalia is named after males. And then we have certain words that are negative or derogatory, and once they were powerful, admiring, and respectful. And so these are words that we have taken from Dr. Tarbet's dissertation, the conquered feminine. And we see like the serpent, and the serpent is a symbol that people are afraid of and like, oh. And the serpent, the Kundalini Devi, was a totem animal and still also in Vedic tradition, very, very revered. And it's a symbol for the sacred feminine. And in Christianity, a symbol of evil. Furies, harpies, hell, they're now monstrous and frightening, but previously they were not. And Dr. Tarbe can talk much more about that. Cow, pig, bitch, like you're such a cow, you're such a pig, you're such a bitch, all very strong words of insult. They were all symbols for feminine qualities. And then whore and witches and cauldrons, which was Dr. Tarbet will elaborate upon. They're turning the sacred into the profane and frightful. So changes in words and mythology reflect changes in civilization, moving from matriarchal to patriarchal societies. This is drawn from Dr. Talbot's research. So with this, actually, I would like to give over the word to Dr. Talbot. And if you could start to share your insights about these words, adultery, blasphemy, fornicate, count, whichever you would like to choose first, and tell us there. And also, yeah, whore and bitch, we also said we will look into the etymology and the background. All right.
So are we ready to begin?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, all of these words are great words. I think a couple of the strongest ones that we hear a lot as swear words or very negative words towards women are whore and bitch. And these are both really good. I'm going to start with those two because they're such good examples of what happened historically in the process of demonizing the sacred feminine and women in general. So we know pretty much when you call someone a whore these days, what someone is talking about. However, what I would like to do is go a little bit into what the original earlier meanings were. So whore actually comes from roots that go all the way back to Proto-Indo-European. And one of the first ones is keros, which means like, or to like or desire, to be a friend, to be friendly, to even caress, and even has to do with being charitable. The Sanskrit root, and correct me if I pronounce it incorrectly, but the Sanskrit root, the kamayati, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That carries the connotation of a desire or a longing for to be in love with or to have sex with without the negative sense of lust. So what happened then is with those two roots, they came to mean just love. And then we get the Indo-European root of kar, which is spelled Q-A-R. And that came from also the Indo-European root karos. In the Middle Eastern language of Akkadian, I'm not sure if that is spoken anywhere anymore, but that translated into kadishtu, and in Aramaic, which is no longer spoken, kadishtor or kadishtet, meaning holy one. So from that, then we got divine bride, sister of God, dedicated. So this became a term for priestesses in very ancient times who had control of the storage houses, ran temple life, also conducted rituals, one of the most important of which was one called the Hieroscomos, and that translates into meaning sacred marriage. This ritual was performed primarily at spring fertility festivals, and it would be probably the head priestess who would be the incarnation of the goddess, and a man who had been chosen to be her consort, to be sort of the temporary king. These were in times when matriarchal societies and kings were temporary, and that temporary time could be as short as 1 year, as long as 12 years. But his time was totally dependent on his virility, his ability to fertilize the goddess, to also protect the land and protect and ensure the fertility of the land and the people, primarily because, you know, survival, the margin of survival was very, very thin. So fertility was very, very important, much more so than we really think about it in these days. So the Hieroscomos, the ritual, one of the earliest images of that appears on a vase from what we call the Uruk III period in Mesopotamia around the 3000 BC. And it shows the man who had been chosen to be king coming to the priestess who had embodied in that part of the world Inanna, and he would be bringing goods to the storehouse of grain, of animals, in preparation for the ritual to take place. One of the really interesting things is that on this vase of the picture of the priestess standing in front of an entryway, which is framed with 2 reed bundles that are really tall and come up and over behind her like that. It literally is intended to look like a vulva. Okay, so the entrance into the womb. And it would, the term in the ritual is called the opening of the gate to him to come in, and she takes him into the storehouse, which is also the temple. And in there would be the marriage bed, and they would perform the sacred sex, the ritual, in which he would have been conferred the right to rule through the priestess from the goddess. Okay, so this was a very, very important ritual. It could also be used for healing. It could also be used to re-support a temporary king's rule, because if he couldn't protect the fertility, if he couldn't protect the land against invaders, he would be removed. And to be removed meant he would be put to death and then replaced with a younger man. Yeah. In the most ancient times, after he would be put to death, his blood would be sprinkled on the fields to help fertilize the fields. So, you know, he had lots of uses. Anyway, 2 really good examples of this are actually in the Old Testament, in Genesis, where Sarah is thought to have been one of these high-ranking priestesses. And she had been called upon by Pharaoh in the area to perform this ritual with him because there was a famine, and he was afraid of losing his position in his life. So she performs this ritual with him. He pays her, you know, her due as a priestess. It was a wage, but then from that, once patriarchal cultures come in, they begin to call this prostitution and adultery, which is interesting because those 2 terms only came into being under patriarchal cultures with an idea of women being property. Okay, so in matriarchal cultures, there is no such thing as adultery or prostitution. It has to do with the woman is my property, and if she's having sex with anyone other than me, then she has become tainted. If my daughter has sex freely of her own volition and her own choice, she has become, that's a sin because she's damaged my property, and I can no longer make a good marriage for myself to increase my wealth, property, and power. So when monotheism comes into these areas which supported patriarchies, then you have these terms, har, being demonized. It was properly pronounced har, but the Hebrews are the ones who pronounced it whore and harlot. Okay, so that gives you a brief idea of what's going on with that word. Bitch, of course, is really fascinating too, because we know that that is the female of the species canine, canid. And so in that respect, it's not a negative term. And in really early times, because the dog was one of the sacred totem animals for the goddess, there's a history to that. In the order of cow, pig, and bitch talks about the order in which these animals were domesticated. And cow was one of the earliest ones domesticated for its meat and the milk, and in the times when the barnyard economy began to be created, which is as long ago right now, as far as we know, at least 7,000 to 7,500 BCE, and perhaps even farther back, especially with new discoveries of Göbekli Tepe and Katahoyuk, where the cow was in that temple precinct. The cow was very venerated. Anyway, so when the pig became domesticated, that became sacred to the goddess, because pigs mature very quickly. They give birth to large litters, so very fertile, lots of abundance, and that along with the domestication of wheat. Then the dog became the guardian of the hearth, and then of doorways and gates, and then also of the fields. So the dog accompanied women and the goddess in lots of different cultures. The dog, of course, is very sacred in Egyptian mythology. And while it was still goddess centered, we have dog-headed gods like Anubis. These dogs, of course, also are very closely associated with the crone aspect of the goddess, and therefore the dark time of the year, lunar aspects, the underworld. But that's a very important time of the year, because that's a time of rest and sleep, when things are renewing and regenerating, so that in the spring we get the new sprouts and new crops. So that time of the year was as important to these groups as the growing season, the other half of the year. So dogs were considered sacred in Egyptian mythology, several others. It's with the Greeks that this becomes a negative term, because Greeks were afraid of dogs, because they represented the underworld, because they also ate flesh. After a battle, you would see dogs go into a battlefield and begin to eat the corpses, along with vultures and other animals. All of these animals were sacred to the goddess, but because that was their function, Greeks hated them. And so so they demonized the term bitch, even though that was part of the title of many of these goddesses. So that gives you a brief idea of what's going on with those two words. So
Amazing.
I can go on and talk about serpent. In the earliest images of goddesses, we see the goddess being able to fertilize herself, and she would be shown with a serpent as part of her anatomy. Then in later times, we would see, like in Greek, it's not actually Greek, but in the Aegean area, one of the creation myths shows a serpent surrounding an egg that had been produced by the goddess, and the serpent fertilizes the egg, and then all life is born out of that egg. The serpent, because it sheds its skin, this is regeneration and renewal, And in Norse mythology, we see that the serpent is the beginning and the ending of one creation and the beginning of a new creation. It became demonized when patriarchal cultures came into these areas. But before that, the serpent, before the pharaonic period in Egypt, for example, in the hieroglyphics, a goddess or the feminine would be represented either with not just a serpent, but the cobra, or with a cauldron. And both of those images represented goddess. As a matter of fact, in Egyptian, it was called the Wajit. And all pharaohs and queens, as part of their crown, would have the cobra right here. And you'll notice it. And it was seen as protection. So the goddess protected. I mean, I'm kind of like open to questions now. So, because I can just go on and on and on with this.
Yeah, I want to read some comments here, and I would love to also go into the other words that we have, because I feel these are still have so bad
Yeah,
connotation.
Kant is a really good one. I didn't pull my research on that, but it's really closely related to another one of those kind of swear words, which you may be familiar with, twat, which in English is spelled T-W-A-T. And it comes from the Egyptian duat or tuat. And that was the opening of the goddess Nut, from which the sun god would be reborn in the morning. She would swallow him in the evening as the old sun god Ra, and then he would travel through her body, which would be symbolized as a serpent, and there would be 12 hours. And in each hour, something would happen to him. In hour 5, that's where he is joined. He does this joining with Osiris, and the process is protected by serpents that represent both Nut and Isis. And then as he continues to travel at dawn, then he is born out of her vagina, but it was called the duat or the tuat in Egyptian. And then, as that became demonized, it became a term, in songs. It was discovered by, I think, Robert Browning. He discovered it in an old body, like beer hall song that would be sung. And that was the term that was used to refer to women, but he misunderstood what it was about. And so you have this background history of like boys on the cusp of going through puberty, thinking it's so funny to call women twats. So that Kant went through the same kind of process. Again, being very holy and sacred to the goddess, because it is the entryway from the goddess, from what we could call chaos, which would actually be not disorder, but the potential for all being. And the potential for all being comes through the goddess manifested into the material world in various forms, in various manifestations. And the very ancient people, when they would bury someone with these little effigies that looked like shells, cowrie shells. And if they had cowrie shells, they would bury the people with those too, because it's shaped like this entryway and was called the cunt. This was for the purpose of readmitting the soul of the dead person back to the goddess for renewal and regeneration, and then rebirth. So fornicate, love fornicate. Comes from the Latin or the Roman forno, which meant heat. And so it's like an oven where something is created or baked. And interestingly enough, a lot of the temples where the priestesses were in the Roman world, on the other side would be a bakery. a forno. So as these women were demonized and the temples would be closed down, the term fornicate became adopted to the rituals that these women would perform in their temples, which would be closed down or built over with the churches, Christian churches. Let's see. That's all, there you go.
What about
Mhm.
what about climax? That didn't strike me as that sounds interesting.
I'm
Climax.
sorry, what word?
Manali is asking about climax.
Oh, hymen?
Climax.
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 Okay, climax, I haven't really studied, so I can't really tell you too much about that. Eve, of course, Eve is interesting because in the Hebrew, it's Hannah, which means the mother of all being. So Eve is really a goddess. And in the creation stories of Genesis, when the Hebrews came into Canaan, they found mother goddess worship. So, and this also ties back into Serpent. So when, first of all, we know it's not nature for a woman to be created out of a man's rib bone. We know that's not real. So she would have actually, if we would go back and look at what was going on, she either would have been a priestess or she would have been a goddess worshipped by the people in that area. Hebrew doesn't have vowels, so Hannah would have been like H-N-H. And actually the Hebrew for God, Yahweh, YWHW, contains Eve in it. The WHW is the Eve part. So even from the beginning, this Godhead was both feminine and masculine together, but the feminine part was suppressed and denied that it had any part in creation. So what you have happening in that creation story where Eve is listening to the serpent, that's a demonization of, she would have been listening to her traditional wisdom in the form of the serpent. And she would have been following her ancient traditions of priestesshood and, eating the apple or whatever else she wanted to, because that was the wisdom, her tradition that she had grown up with, which of course the Hebrew priests wanted to demonize because they couldn't control the women they found in that area unless they took away their power. So Eve becomes demonized, and then Paul in the New Testament, says that because we're all born of Eve, we're all born into sin, and sin, of course, is nothing more than following a religious tradition that is not Judeo or Christian.
That's it.
What would pass for sin in goddess-centered cultures would have been something that would have been matricide. To kill a mother would have put the whole community in danger of starvation. And so anyone who would have committed a matricide would have been banned. Matricide, Latin means mother killing.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, the killing of a mother. And so anyone who would have killed a mother would have been kicked out, exiled out of that society, which really would have meant certain death, because it would be very, very difficult to survive on your own. So when we get into Greek mythology and the story of Clytemnestra and her son Orestes. When Clytemnestra's husband comes back from the Trojan War, that's Agamemnon, he's been gone for 9 years. In that time, the traditional length of time for a king to rule was 7 to 9 years. So when he didn't come back, she went ahead and got a new husband, as was the tradition for her to do, because they needed to have with her a male who, the male component of fertility. So when he comes back home, she's going, okay, we can't have two husbands. So the tradition, in the tradition, he's taking a bath in this vat that's actually shaped like a sacrificial bath, in which a sacrificial animal would have been offered up by slitting its throat. And this is what she does. She comes up behind him and slits his throat, literally sacrificing him and making it possible for her new consort to continue to rule. Her son, in the retelling of the myth, then kills her. And what she does is she calls on her furies, which would have been goddess beings whose job would have been to dispense justice. And so their job then is to hound him, to chase him down and basically put him to death. So what happens is he appeals to these new Greek gods, particularly Apollo and Athena, to protect him. And they promise to, we're not going to let that happen to you. And Athena says, we will put you on trial, but I can tell you right now, you'll be found innocent, because I will cast the deciding vote. And in that vote, I will not vote in favor of the dead mother. I will vote in favor of you, because I'm not born of woman. I was born from out of my father Zeus, the myth of where he has a headache and his head is split open and she comes out full adult goddess. And she says, because I'm not born of woman, women do not give birth. They just hold the seed until it incubates, and then it comes forth out of her. But we trace our beginnings only from the father now. From now on, the woman is nothing but an empty vessel. She has nothing to do with creativity. Therefore, you were right to put your mother to death, because by killing your father, she put in danger your entire lineage. So that becomes demonized. Furies become demonized. Woman has her power taken away from her at that point, and is seen as evil because of Clytemnestra. Let's see, what others? To make something profane is to take away its sacredness, which is basically the whole process of what happened to not just the 12 words that I really looked at, but several others that I have on my list that haven't appeared yet. But I mean, abyss and chaos are two others. Abyss is the world womb. It is the womb of the goddess, of the creativity through which all life comes. Chaos can be seen as the threshold, which then what we're talking about is we're talking about the cunt, we're talking about the twat, we're talking about the vaginal entrance, we're talking about all of those terms that refer to that threshold from one state of being to this state of being, and allowing any potential for being to be manifest into this world. Patriarchal societies believe that life is purely linear, that you have birth, life, death, that's it. Matriarchal societies believe in the cycle of life, of birth, life, death, rebirth, so that there's a cycle of life. And so that you return, you are renewed, rejuvenated, and you can be born again and have a different, you know, the essence, the spirit or the soul continues. But because of the patriarchal philosophy or tradition of life being linear, all that stuff becomes demonized. Let's see.
Yeah.
But and so abyss, then how abyss becomes demonized is it is changed from being the cauldron of creativity into something that is empty and bottomless.
Right.
Right.
Void.
Loss because of the patriarchal insistence that everything be linear, that it have one order, one version of how things are done. Chaos means things can be done in several different ways. Life can take several different forms. Not only can it take several different forms, but a profusion, not only of those forms, but a profusion of number. The goddess doesn't limit things. You know, it's abundant. And in the Odyssey,
Profusion means to profuse also.
Profusion is like, yeah, flowering,
Flowering.
proliferation.
yes, in abundance, yes. So, you know, in the Odyssey, when Odysseus in this Greek epic, when he's trying to get back home, he meets, first of all, he meets a goddess, Kirke, who had been demoted by this time by the Greeks to being a sorceress. So the sorceress, again, that whole negative thing of magician because of her power to create. And when we meet her, she's in her cave, which is an archetypal symbol of the womb, and she's weaving. And what she's doing is she's weaving things into creation. And as she weaves, all of this creation flows out of her cave, including the waters of life. When he meets Calypso later on, another goddess who's been demoted to being a sorceress, we meet her also weaving in her cave. When he's Athena is the goddess of weaving things into being. When he meets, Athena brings him to an island ruled by Alcinous and Arete. Arete is the queen. She weaves. We meet her weaving not just things into being, but fabric. And actually, literally, what she does is weave Odysseus a new suit of clothes. Because by the time he's gotten to her island, he's gone through a death and a rebirth. In the fact that he's washed ashore on their island, all of his men are dead, all of his ships are destroyed, and he falls asleep, and Athena creates a womb woven out of the two plants that are most sacred to her, the olive and the laurel. And then in the morning when he awakes, he emerges from her womb, reborn and naked. And so Alcinous and Arete's daughter finds him and brings him back, and Arete gives him these new clothes, which are literally a new identity for him, created by the feminine. And it's only the feminine, it's only because of the feminine throughout the Odyssey that he even survives and gets back home. His wife, Penelope, the whole time he is gone, she's weaving. And research has been done to find that as she is weaving this, it's actually a funeral shroud and unweaving, you can trace his journeys, and he's literally shuttling back and forth across the Mediterranean,
Wow.
So she's weaving him home.
Amazing.
So, you know, we see these things, and in many traditions, weaving, the goddess of creation is a weaver, the spider. The spider is a symbol for Athena. The spider in Native American mythologies is a goddess, and she is weaving things into creation.
Mm. Mm.
So, yeah. So okay.
So beautiful. Amazing. Yeah. So beautiful. Ah, yes. If anyone wants to share and has questions, please. This is the conversation, and I want to also welcome Maris, who I heard is here now finally with us. You made it. Yay.
As far as I know, there's no link to my paper. And Sharada, how did your teacher find my dissertation? Because I know it's in hardback cover, but I don't know of a link where it can be found.
I have to ask her. I have to ask her how she found it. Actually, I don't know how she found it. Yeah.
I do know that,
But I can make it
through,
available to everyone. Instead of
yes, that
is
would
it
be
okay?
great if you would
Yeah.
do that. I
Yeah.
do know that the publisher who has control of it is called ProQuest. It's a group that publishes dissertations all over the place from many different institutions. So I don't, you know, I haven't looked there, so I don't know what that link would be. So yes, if you could find that, Sharada, and share that with everyone, that would be wonderful.
Of course, yeah. And we're so happy to continue to invite you for further discussions. Excited about
Yes,
it.
and then of course some of these words will be submitted to your dictionary.
Yes, exactly. Dr.
Yeah,
Tarbe
right.
is part of our dictionary co-author.
Yes, yes. Just so you know, right now I have 17 words to contribute to
Amazing.
that dictionary. So
Oh, what a blessing. Yeah, she's weaving the spider. Yeah. In Vedic tradition, also the spider is Ashtalakshmi, she with the 8 legs. And they're the 8 different aspects of wealth, of brains and food and children and animal and money.
and you know, when you look at the web and
Yeah.
the connection of it, then you can start talking about also the net of jewels, how each of us is a jewel and we're all connected through this cosmic net, which is a very beautiful image, I think. And that a net is so very closely related to what a spider creates or weaves when she weaves her web and weaves things into creation.
Yeah. And here in Bali also the ikat is still very present. Ikat is the art of weaving. And in many other cultures, no?
Yes.
Yes, South American cultures.
And that's another reason why predominantly, but maybe not exclusively, weaving has been always done by women.
Mm.
And you have this connection between the goddess as the cosmic weaver and
Yeah.
women as weavers as well. So
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting how you had talked about dog, cow, and right, cow, dog, and boar, and it seems like in Bali still those haven't yet those still maintain their sacredness. There's a tradition over here of making a lot of beautiful masks, and they're ceremonial and they're used in temple festivities and such. And so the barong, it comes in several different forms. There's the lion, there's a tiger, there's also a boar, there's a cow face, and there's a dog. And so I think it's very interesting that over here, those animals in Hindu cultures, it seems they're still.
yeah, and you mentioned lion and tiger, which reminds me, cat. All species of felines are also sacred to the goddess. And we know that cat, at least in the Western world, has been severely demonized. And then, of course, that becomes one of the euphemisms for the yoni, the
Mhm.
pussy. That's another euphemism, you know.
Ah,
Yeah. Oh, you may not. Okay. So in the West, the pussy is a euphemism for the
mm,
yoni, and but cats. Um, bef- um, so the lion in Egypt can also be a symbol for the goddess. And there's two or three goddesses, Egyptian goddesses that are feline goddesses. Sekhmet is the warrior goddess, and then uh, I can't remember, Bastet. She's more the domestic cat that we're more familiar with. Um, and in in Newt's body, in that fifth hour of the night where the Ra is being, that's the beginning of his rejuvenation. That's literally a cave shape, and it is guarded by two lions, which patriarchal historians have said is sacred to the god Acre, which is true. But before that, the lion was sacred to the goddess. So,
mhm.
and we have two cat-headed goddesses in Egyptian mythology. In Norse
Yeah.
mythology, the goddess um, um, Freyr, Freyr, uh, her chariot is drawn by house cats. So,
Mm,
so cat is sacred to her. And of course, then cat again has all those associations with the moon and nighttime, because cats are nocturnal unless they live with you long enough, and they kind of come awake at certain times during the day. Um, but again, that's a good thing that in places like Bali, that this demonization process hasn't necessarily happened.
mm,
My tracing was how it has definitely happened in the Western world, and how it definitely happened because of patriarchal cultures, warrior cultures, moving in, worshiping a head god who was both a warrior god and a thunder god, and claimed to be the great creator of existence.
mm,
And
mm,
I was kind of thinking, it seems that the I think it goes hand in hand with us getting farther and farther away from nature and the natural world. I think that in more traditional societies, or even just now, the more you are connected with the environment, the more you're interacting with animals and plants, you can get a sense why the ancients had a much more reverential relationship, by really
Yeah, I
seeing the
agree.
power in animals. And I think the more disconnected we are in our modern lives, it's easy to slip into all of this insult.
I
yeah.
agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So much. So much.
Mhm.
Yes. And that's why we want to make an international sacred sex dictionary together.
Yeah.
So that we can have a culture and words that acknowledge all that is in our being. And so we are looking to collect words and phrases and meanings from all of you here, so we can co-create this. And just to show you some words, and I see here in the chat also some of you already have written some of the words. And here, okay, we didn't know that, or I didn't know that the pussy is actually a euphemism.
Yeah.
Now there's
Yes.
like this goddess movement to reclaim the word pussy. Um, so that's maybe discussable,
Yeah.
like everything. We just talked about that before. So, but in for example, in Swedish, they have pinta. I don't know if I say this correct. Aida Devi shared this word with us, and it actually means wet meadow. So that feels like a very honoring, beautiful word for our,
And
yeah.
yeah, and that's part of my point in recovering the sacred feminine. We need to reclaim these words
Hmm.
and take away, neutralize the negative connotations and return them to their more positive meaning. And, that's as simple as each of us deciding that I'm using this in a positive way. I'm not using it in a negative way. And like I said yesterday, anytime I get called a bitch these days, I thank the person who said that to me.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. With all the words, with every single word, we can neutralize it. All is judgments and demonization and the what's the noun for the derogative?
Yeah. The noun
Is
for
there a noun for derogative?
I don't know.
Derogation? No, I don't know. But yes, any derogative connotation and
Yes.
fill it with its essential meaning. In Italian, Elisa Devi shared with us fica. I don't know if I say this correctly. You're also welcome to unmute yourself, women and men, and share with us your words. Fig fruit, that's beautiful. And in Sanskrit already we told you, yoni is a beautiful word that really refers to the genitalia, but also it refers to the womb and the universal womb, and the inner meaning, the root meaning is that which is the cause of the whole universe. Same like lingam, cause it's linga yate, that which causes to birth this whole universe. The lingam is a beautiful word for the penis, but not only, again, beyond the physical genitalia, also it's a representation of consciousness, Satchidananda, and Satchidananda is the auspicious, known as Shiva. So it's a beautiful form for Shiva, for the sacred masculine, and Yoni in the form of the sacred, for the sacred feminine, Shakti Devi. It looks like a Yoni. Usually I have a Shiva lingam here. Right. Oh, there it is. Can you show me, give me the Shiva lingam? It's there on the, yeah.
And with Kundalini.
And with Kundalini, the snake here, this is a beautiful form here. You have the Yoni here, and then the lingam inside the Yoni, and the serpent around her as the Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, the three qualities that are in this Jagat, in the world. So, and then Monali, you shared a beautiful word in Indonesian.
Yeah, it's just I think a kind of a nice way of intercourse, berhubungan. Again, it's given that Indonesian is my second language, I probably come at it with a different. For me, the connotation might be more positive also, but I think it's nice. It means connecting, literally. So that word is used in many cases. When you're calling up somebody as well, telephoning them. Yeah.
I love Sylvia. Sylvia saying, yes, she was actually called a bitch today as a joke. And she used the example. That's wonderful. And Maurice, are you here? I would love, this is the beautiful excerpt from Marie's book, Be the Heroine of Your Own Myths, that Maurice is writing since many years. And it comes from her, Viva la vulva, vive la différence. And like each and every flower in nature, real vulvas come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and colors, same like lingams. And so Maurice Devi gives some beautiful, I love this description of voluptuous vulva, or charismatic cunt, powerful pussy, sacred yoni, perfume garden. Would you like to elaborate on this?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yay! You may all remember me as your not so savvy technologically challenged friend. So here we are in perfect timing. Sorry, I missed your part, Doctor. I I'm here, however.
Yay.
So, yes.
Welcome.
I would like to share something I wrote from my book on the topic and go from there. Voluptuous vulva, charismatic cunt, powerful pussy, sacred yoni, perfume garden. Did you know that the Latin origin of the word vagina means sheath for a sword? I don't know about you, but I'd rather have my pussy stay away from any connotation of being a depository for a weapon. Besides, when referring to the entire female genitalia, the word vagina is clearly a misnomer, as it represents only one part, although a significant part of the internal genitalia. When only referring to our external female genitalia, the word vulva is the chosen word by the connoisseurs. Meanwhile, contemporary artists, including rap singers, writers, and poets, are actively reclaiming the word cunt as a positive and powerful force in their lives. The word cunt has a powerful sound to it. For eons, power in the hands of women was considered dangerous. Men feared female sexuality, identifying female sexual energy as a threat to patriarchal values. Interestingly, in the Latin term cunus, which was derived jointly from the name of the Greek goddess of fertility, Kuntus, and the Indian goddess of nature, Kunti, led to our current English term, cunt. Since not everyone has this historical knowledge, you may wish to recognize that there are occasions when this word may best be used discreetly. The name, which conveys the sacredness of the female genitalia in Sanskrit, which is considered the language of the gods in the Vedic tradition, is Yoni. Yoni means womb, the womb of creation, within which lies the source of all human life. A woman's yoni is like the entire universe. I like to refer to it as the Yoniverse. So this was written way before the Yoniverse. This Yoniverse festival was given a name. So that's part of why I chose to read this. You may want to play with it. I mean the word, pun intended, as you introduce your lover to its melodic resonance. Yoni also means sacred space. It encompasses both the external vulva and the internal genital organs. While there's no specific word in the English language which is equivalent to yoni, that doesn't mean that you can't christen your genitalia with your own poetic name. The poetic names flower and garden regarding our female genitalia have long been used in ancient tradition, which were obviously very inspired by our garden of delights. Arab, Persian, and Chinese cultures, amongst others, refer to our female genitalia as the perfume garden, a jade garden, the heavenly gate, the mysterious valley, a garden of delights, the mystic rose, a pleasure garden, a papaya, the shrine of love, and the pillow of musk and flower. Perhaps there are one or more of these which may particularly inspire you. Go ahead and playfully try it out. Or perhaps create your own personal word of endearment for your unique special flower. Ultimately, sister, it's your pussy, yoni or cunt. So you get to decide what best suits you, what you prefer, including any other words which is endearing and or empowering to you. The particular exploration of our intimate anatomy of pleasure encourages us to learn what we enjoy and how to embrace it, thereby enhancing our sexual pleasure and promoting the experience of sexual ecstasy. Are you ready for a truly personal and empowering adventure? Let's go and explore. Shall we? Let us begin with our vulva, to then unveil our elusive clitoris. The stranger, which undoubtedly wishes to be welcomed with profound reverence. Viva la vulva! Vive la différence! Like each and every flower in nature, real vulvas come in all kinds of shapes, sizes, and colors. Let's now imagine all different graphics showing your particular vulva as an art form, as a piece of art. Labia are not always even, symmetrical, and uniform as the porn industry would like us to believe. Oftentimes, a pair of labia may feature two very different lengths, one labium being significantly longer than the other. And some women have larger inner labia than outer labia. Labia also change shape, not only during the different stages of the woman's arousal, but also throughout the different stages of the woman's life. As with labia, the clitoris may also vary greatly in size from one woman to the other. And guess what? All vulva are perfectly normal, acceptable, and beautiful in their own unique and natural way. And just to complete here, our vulva refers to our external genitals, including the mount pubis, the vestibular or clitoral bulbs. I have a graphic for that, that's not today. Vulva vestibule, external urethral orifice, the clitoris, vaginal opening called inferiorus, along with the inner and outer labia, the labia majora or larger lips, and the labia minora or smaller lips. Although the terms outer and inner labia are more politically correct these days, outer and inner. Correct these days than labia majora and labia minora, since on some women, the inner labia happen to be the larger ones, with the outer labia being the smaller ones. Mother Nature is so diverse and colorful. I also include the perineum and the anus and the external genitalia, so that is for the rest of the book. So there we go. Viva la vulva.
Viva la vulva. Let's say it all together. Viva la vulva.
Vulva!
Which
Viva
means
la
la
vulva!
vulva. Jay Yoni in Sanskrit.
Viva la différence! Viva la différence!
And
Italian?
even, huh?
Our Italian friend here could say it in Italian.
Yes.
Viva la differenza.
Valencia.
In any
So,
case.
how is everyone? How are you doing? Are you ready to go into breakout rooms and share with each other? The idea is now that we'll have a time for breakout rooms and you can go and share with each other if you remember words, and you can please write them down and then you can tell them to us after, because we want to collect all of them. And we also have, if you don't want to go into the breakout room, you can now take the time to fill out the questionnaire, which we post here in the chat. So and if you don't have time now or want to fill it out now and you just want to sit with it also, of course, that's fine. We will keep with this project for a while. That's going to be has its own timing. And so you can send it to us anytime. And if you feel you want to send it to your friends and sisters and mothers, and please send this questionnaire around to friends. And yes, so we can have as many languages as possible.
Yeah, we would be so interested in having your input and hope that you also enjoy kind of thinking about the questions and reflecting. So I hope that it's enjoyable to go through.
Yes.
I hope that it is.
So we're gonna assign the okay. Okay, is everyone back? I think so, yes. How was it? Do you feel like sharing some insight?
So interesting. I think that we kind of noticed, from UK, from Amrita in India, the trend from going from a more poetic language, a more sensitive, aesthetic, sacred language to, being very functional in how we talk about our sexuality, functional, medical, literalist. So I think that this dictionary, this idea of putting this together, I think we want more aesthetics and beauty and in our lives and feeling. That's sacred.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Feel free to just unmute yourself or write in the chat.
Hello.
Hello, Joanna.
Hi. So we were talking, I was talking with Yanni and Marisa, and I think it was very nice. We were talking of how words, at least in Spanish and Portuguese, for instance, they normally are very, children-like. We also use pipi in Portuguese. And well, there is a nice word in Spanish that is mariposa. In Portuguese, we also use little dove, but I think it's mostly also for kids, and I don't really feel connected to it. So we were talking about how poetic names and normally resonate more with ourselves, and it's good for us to create one that speak to us. I said that the word flame had come to my mind, and I think it's actually something that I'm gonna try out because I really feel it's appropriate and fitting.
Beautiful. A flame, did you say? Yeah, I
Flame
love it. Flame.
in Portuguese, chama.
Shaman. Beautiful.
Chama, like in Spanish, llama. I think
Ah, Yama, yeah. Mm.
it's good to have a word in your own language so that you can also introduce it in your relationships, and it doesn't feel so maybe fremd,
Yeah,
foreign.
foreign. Yeah. Oh, you're speaking German about
Yes, I both. Yeah. So it was very interesting. Yes.
Beautiful. Please write that if you want. We just added some of the question, like you say, the new words that you create also in the question, and love to hear new words you come up with. Mm. Thank you. Julia is saying, yes, very interesting how the whole topic is so charged. So it's difficult to find a word that feels natural and good to use in your own mother language. Easier in new language. Yeah. Mm. Anyone else? Mm. Mhm. Mm.
Yeah, hi.
Hello, Jocelyn. Josephine.
we talked about Swedish words, and yeah, it got me thinking about the word for yoni, but also like all the we talked about, even like naming the male organs, or the act of having sex, like we explore those words as well, and it was just such a revelation to realize that I couldn't really find any vocabulary that I really liked for any of it. Like,
Wow.
it's just yeah, it's just a great insight, because I really want to explore that further on, because I mean it's an important things or natural things in our lives. So yeah, keep thinking about that, not just the Joni, but all of it. The interaction also, and the male. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. As a German speaking girl, women, we also have been thinking, and so like when we were thinking about the self pleasuring, there is no beautiful word at all for self pleasuring. One is like Selbstbefriedigung, and it doesn't have, I mean, it could be okay, but it's like just to give yourself peace. It's like pacifying one down, or and then for and then for sex, there's like really very uninspiring words, like you sleep with each other, or you fuck is a word, and vergeln is two birds, like birding. It kind of sounds nice, but then when you actually say it, it doesn't have any intimacy or heart connection. Shag. Mm. Yeah. So it's inspiring, like you say, to go and really take the time to find a vocabulary and words and language that really resonates with you for different parts, not only the vulva, but it can also be your breasts, for example, and different parts of the body, and then especially the self-pleasuring, and then the act of love making and finding a language, and that's so empowering. Yeah, and it's empowering for you, and for also for them to communicate it with a partner, mm, to be able to share. Communication is so important in the sacred arts of lovemaking. So yeah, if no one else has any, I would love to go on with this topic. I love this topic. So much to share, but this is a teaser, a taster, and we will be looking into this more in the universe, and we also have this topic in our Devi temple and Devi school, and more programs to come. So you can check them out. But so welcome to join our free reaching out program now, Yoniverse, that is going to continue. And yes, thank you so much for all joining. And we're gonna